We start the second hour, though. Your Ducks, they fell.
They did.
They did.
I will remember you.
Till they die, die, die. And they're dead. Creighton beat them.
That got dark in a hurry.
Well, you're the one.
Why you got to kill my team off, man?
Beep, beep, bye-bye. Creighton. It was a good game. It was a great game, actually.
Great game, man.
Creighton ended up getting the win, and they went in double overtime. I was looking up. Sorry, there. I was trying to. There was a tweet that I wanted to bring up for this because, man, you talk about a game. N'Faly Dante and Jermaine Couisnard probably had the greatest game in Duck basketball history from a duo.
They scored from the start of the second half until there were 30 seconds left in overtime. Tracy had like an airball missed putback or whatever. Until that 30 seconds left in overtime, they scored every point.
Yeah. They had collectively, Couisnard and N'Faly Dante, 60 points, 28 rebounds, 6 assists, 6 threes made, and 4 blocks. No other Division I teammate duo in the last 25 years has put up all of those numbers in any game. That's from OptaStats. That is remarkable. And they almost pulled it off, but Creighton is deeper. Shellstad got hurt. It looked like an ankle knee thing, kind of weirdly
it was a knee
stepped
sprain,
on.
And he didn't want to put him back in and risk it. And then they didn't have the extra ball handler.
So Couisnard just brought it up.
Well, he did, and then Creighton figured out what they were doing, and then they just doubled him, forced the ball out of his hands, and
nobody else could beat you.
Tracy and whoever they couldn't.
Rigsby. I mean, they didn't make they didn't have a single bucket off the bench, 0 bench points. No. They had, nothing from anybody, and despite all of that,
it had N'Faly Dale.
Are you okay?
If Dante had made
Ndali Fonte,
yeah, it is.
If you don't inbound the ball to him, you win the game.
And that was a freshman.
It was a freshman taking the ball out. He panicked in that moment because you're worried about the 5-second count. He sees the first open jersey he can see, inbounds it to Dante. He took the blame for missing the free throw. But if you get that ball into Couisnard, the way he's playing, I have zero doubt that he's
I'm surprised they didn't have
throws.
Dante take it out. That's what I would have done.
I don't know how Evans isn't a good free throw shooter either. So then are you in the same spot where you have another random big that's kind of roaming around trying to get open? But
But they didn't really run anything and set a screen to get Couisnard open.
Yeah.
I saw Altman in the post game. He took blame for the loss. He said, this was my fault. I shouldn't have somebody like that inbounding the ball, and it put him in that spot. Here was N'Faly Dante in the post game on his effort and a loss to Creighton. You know, he's asked, like, hey, where does this rank for you? It was a great game by N'Faly Dante, and this is what he had to say.
Well, I would not say best game of my career because we didn't win. So I wish I could made that last free throw. That could be the game, but that's on me. There's a lot of things I could do to help my team, but I didn't.
Yeah, but he went out, man, with a great – the career didn't start out how he wanted it to, but, man, did he go out on top doing what he could to get – I mean, the Ducks they're in overtime, 50 seconds. They were up 4 with 50 seconds left.
Yeah, less than a minute to go.
From getting this team to a Sweet 16, I know he's bummed in the postgame. I saw him put his hands over his face. It's devastating. College career comes to an end, all of that. But a hell of an effort and a hell of a run by a team that just at one point – we were firing Dana Altman, and they were going to miss the tournament, and then they won the conference tournament, and they got that close against what I think is a sneaky good little value bet to win the title in Creighton at 25-1.
They're a lot of fun to watch, man, and they shoot the lights out, and they just kind of outlasted Oregon in this game. By the time you got to that second OT, you didn't have Shellstad anymore. Or the Oregon is riding 2 guys. The usage rate on Couisnard and N'Faly Dante at that point in the game, they just had to have been out of gas because you're just running basically pick and roll between the two of them on every offensive possession in the second half and down the stretch and into overtime. And so you're touching the ball every play. They don't have a moment where you just go stand in the corner for 30 seconds and catch your breath. And so it's just hard to maintain that level of play for that long. I felt horrible for N'Faly Dante. And the emotions of what he showed in that press conference after the game sum up why this is a special event and how much it means to these guys. I mean, for him to go out with, 28 points, 20 rebounds, he was dominant. He carried the team to this point. He single-handedly won the conference championship game. Couisnard was great as well, but Dante dominated that game. And then you had Couisnard go off in round one, and then Dante and Couisnard both in this game. You feel horrible for the way that they played because they deserved a shot at the Sweet 16. Those guys are on fire right now, and it would have been really fun to see how long they could last. The unfortunate part is kind of the story of their season summed up why their season came to an end. And that was, this is a team that was riddled with injuries all year. You're still down 2 starters. And then you have Shellstad go down, who is one of your only other reliable kind of, all right, you leave him open, you're in trouble. He's going to knock down some threes. He can get hot. He can control the ball. He can run the offense a little bit. So he goes down late in the game, and you're left with like Rigsby and Tracy trying to handle the rock when you're double teaming Couisnard, and you just don't have any other options at that point. So it's really unfortunate that the injuries once again kind of derailed an Oregon season, and it would have been fun to see this team fully healthy, how long they could have gone. But a tip of the cap to them and the program and Dante and Couisnard for just like breathing some life back into it, man. The last 2 years haven't been great. The end of last year got a little ugly. You mentioned the conversations that were happening around Altman, like getting them to this point and at least getting a taste of the action again. I think it has reinvigorated the fan base, and now you're excited again with a lot of young players who should be coming back for another year of development.
It is wild to see a 43 minutes registered for a player and 0 points. I mean, I'm not trying. They didn't lose the game just because Rigsby couldn't get a bucket, but to play 43 minutes and have no points.
Yeah.
They had 13 points total outside of 2 guys. And I don't
know if I've ever, like, I don't watch that much college basketball, but a lot of tournament basketball, to see only 2 guys go a whole half and basically a whole overtime period.
That's wild.
The only guys that could score.
And they, again, they had their opportunity to win the game.
And they're up by 4 with 50 seconds to go, despite having nobody else score.
Danny Manning and the Miracles sort of stuff with Kansas the year that he took them on their back to a title.
Well, and unfortunately, he got to that second overtime. You could just kind of see Couisnard getting really exhausted because he's coming off screens and they're throwing to it.
He couldn't when he did get by him, he couldn't finish at the rim.
And then Creighton hits 2 threes right out of the bat. You're down by 6.
Their 7'1" center hits a 3, and
Kalkbrenner.
Bank one in. You're like, all right, I think this ship has sailed.
When he hit that 3, he just randomly had the ball and stepped back and just hoisted. I'm like, what? And then he netted it. I'm like, okay, well.
What are you going to do at this point?
There's nothing you could do. I'm not kidding. Like, that was a great run and a great turn of a season by Altman and company. This Creighton team kind of has what you're looking for if you're talking about winning a tournament like this. 2 wing scorers in Shireman and Alexander.
7-footer.
The 5'8", white point guard. That's
gritty,
gym rat, high motor, high IQ guy.
Slap the floor guy.
Slap the floor. And then you've got Kalkbrenner. Like, it's kind of a recipe for a team that you'd see in a Final Four. And, oh, by the way, their coach is really good. When they came out of that timeout late in that second half and overtimes, they just threw 2 at Couisnard and like, all right.
You can't beat us now.
It's now just in Folly Dante's that's going to have to beat us. And he's a great player, but he doesn't have the most offensive game in the world.
No.
And so it became really challenging. And also Kalkbrenner's a really big body, so it makes it every shot he shoots becomes increasingly difficult.
Well, and then now on top of it, going into the Sweet 16 for Creighton, they get perennial choke artist Rick Barnes. And so I know Tennessee's look good.
They won their one game by shooting, 3 of 25 from 3? That's normally the game they lose with Rick Barnes.
They've looked good, but I wouldn't. I mean, their line I think is 2.5, so it's a pretty short line. I think it's a toss-up game. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Creighton wins it. I'm with it. They just seem like a really complete team right now. For Oregon, I hope this. I hope we get to the point where this kind of builds on something.
There seemed to be a commitment within the program of coming back next year.
One of the guys who was out was your top recruit and local product of Mookie Cook, so hopefully he's going to be back and healthy. You got a glimpse of him for like 2 minutes this year, and that was it. Shellstad, we know how talented he is, and hopefully only going to get better. You know, Evans makes that late pass. It's a freshman, boneheaded mistake that you don't want to make, but his athletic build and the physicality, and he could shoot it a little bit. Like, there's a ton of potential there. And then they're going to be active in the portal. Tracy has said he wants to come back. So it would be really nice to kind of build on this, have a lot of that roster stick together, add another player or two, and see how far you can go. But replacing N'Faly Dante and Couisnard, as we saw, that was kind of your entire team on Saturday night. And so those are going to be big shoes to fill.